list at number 10. An open field. Coming from a user named Ursa Lee Minor, who at the end of the story reinforces the fact that they're not religious. This isn't a medical versus spiritual debate, this is just their experience, so I figured I'd lead with that, as that's the case for most of these stories. But this user claims to have seen the other side after being admitted to an ICU. They saw this field with trees on both sides and then water right at the end of it. Like those fields with the electrical lines that run through with no houses, no residents. It's calm, but it's a long clear area surrounded by trees. But in the center there was a very large oak tree, and it had this massive presence, and it told them, the tree told them, that they were not done living yet and should return back to life. But they reminded this figure that they were very sick in real life and that this seemed like a nice place. The forest, they note, felt dark and scary though, those trees on both sides. It felt like a place they didn't want to go, only towards the water. And then they saw a bright light and woke up in the ICU. Again, they don't want a religious debate or anything, that's just their experience. Forest bad, water good. Duly noted.
In our number 9 spot today, we have Fields of Gold. This story comes from a Reddit thread in which the original poster asked the question of what those who had died and been resuscitated remembered seeing. A Reddit user replied to the thread and explained a story that their mom had told them about when her heart stopped during surgery. Their mom thankfully was brought back, and when she recovered enough and woke up from surgery, she later explained that all she remembered was being in a field of flowers. So here I am, hearing that, thinking of the Wizard of Oz, everyone's just skipping down the yellow brick road, but as it turns out, maybe it's absolutely nothing like that. There was one Redditor who commented on this story with a hot take that kind of made me feel a little uneasy about the whole thing. They explained how it makes sense that a field of flowers is traditionally a more calming image, but that it feels odd to them. A little unnerving and empty, totally devoid of any other people. I'm not gonna lie, that does sound quite eerie, but I'm sure for some of you watching this video that truly sounds like heaven.
Number 8. A life lesson. This next one comes from a user named Harry and Lana. One semester they had a class where this man came in to explain his near-death experience. What a powerful class. Our only guests would be like, people who wrote one poem 10 years ago. You're like, great, I'm gonna fall asleep in this class. This man was kayaking with a friend. He ended up flipping his kayak over, and then he got sucked under by the current. His friend had to watch him pass out underwater and get dragged down the river. Just a nightmare of a scene, but during his time unconscious, the man described this dark place almost as if it was a cave, but the walls were soft and velvet-like. At the end of this cave, there was a plethora of colors. He described it as a kaleidoscope, one would say, or a stained glass window. Either way, it was beautiful. But he saw these dark figures passing by on the other side of this glass. Moments after one of the most frightening experiences of his life, he said he felt comfort and peace. He felt like God wanted him to be there, but he also said that you must have to be pretty terrible to go to hell, because he himself wasn't the greatest of guys before this accident. His friend caught up to his body, luckily, and he was able to revive him, but now this man feels a stronger connection with everybody, and he's grateful to have had this experience. This user finishes the story saying that they hope this was calming to hear, as other encounters are quite scary. Yeah, it was calming, thank you, and also we're glad that you're alive. Sweet.
In our number 7 spot today, we have The Gates of Hell. Veronica Ulrich Barthel was 22 years old in 1981, and that is when she was struck by lightning while she was driving. I always thought that that was impossible, but turns out everyone just lied to me as a kid. But I'll unpack that later, I guess. When she got struck by lightning, she began having an out-of-body experience. She said she could see herself holding the steering wheel with burned hands, which sounds absolutely terrifying. She then said she went on a journey through a tunnel, which led her to be standing in front of a gate that read, "Welcome to Hell." Yeah, okay, I thought the burned hands were bad, but this might be worse. She then explains that she was brought to a waiting room, which sounds a lot like hell, and that she could see people suffering in torment, and I was like, yeah, we've all been in a waiting room before, we get it. She then said that she met someone who she presumed to be Jesus, but who really knows? Whoever this mystery man was, he sent her back to her body. When she came back into the physical world, apparently all she could do was scream, "I was dead and in hell," over and over and over again.
Number 6. Annabelle Beam. At just age 4, Annabelle Beam was diagnosed with 2 life-threatening digestive disorders, and by the time she was 8 years old, she was struggling quite a bit. She was sitting in a tree just thinking about life. She was up high, maybe 30 feet up, but all of a sudden the branch that she was sitting on broke and she fell down into a hollow part of the base of the tree. She was stuck there for 6 hours, but during that time, she said that she died and went to heaven. They actually made a movie about this. It came out in 2016 with Jennifer Gardner. It's called Miracles from Heaven. Fun fact, when I worked at a movie theater that year, where I actually had to assemble the tree of life in the front lobby. It was a rough morning, a lot of leaves, but you know what? Great film. Go check it out. But the story is wild. It's a real story, and after she fell, she was all of a sudden with Jesus, with J-Lord himself. And Jesus told her that after the firefighters got her out, she won't be sick anymore, and that she has plans to fulfill here on Earth. When she did wake up later, she was indeed no longer sick, and her mother wrote the book Miracles from Heaven.
In our number 5 spot today, we have poor Michelangelo. This is another Reddit story that pertains to an experience someone's mom had. The Redditor explained that their mom had a brain aneurysm that was nearly fatal. There was a point where the doctors were telling the Redditor that their mom likely wasn't going to make it, but thankfully by some miracle their mother was able to make a full recovery. She later told the Redditor that after experiencing several hours of pain, she eventually just felt total peace, lightness, and relaxed happiness. This is super nice, which is why I had to include it, but it's actually not what I want to talk about today. The super crazy part about this is that the first words that the Redditor's mother spoke to them when she awoke were, quote, "Isn't it so sad about Michelangelo?" Yes, I was also confused at first, but later in the thread, the Redditor cleared up what she meant. Keep in mind that prior to this terrible incident, their mother never had any interest in art, or Michelangelo for that matter. It turns out, however, that once she awoke, whatever happened or wherever she went, she was given the impression that Michelangelo was essentially treated really terribly and was put under some pretty awful conditions for the 4 years that it took him to paint the Sistine Chapel. The Redditor said that it was so out of character at the time that it was quite concerning, which totally makes sense, but now I'm just wondering if this information is actually true.
Number 4, stay or go. Coming from user Zana Vinovovich, this account takes us back to 1986. Her mother was put under for C-section, and at that time they were in Italy and not citizens, so she also chose to not have a sonogram to determine the sex. So she was put under, and then next you know, doctors are performing CPR chest compressions on her. What is happening? Her mother said that while she was out of it, despite what was happening in real time, she felt also at peace. She was calm and in a very comforting place. She didn't hear a voice or see a tree figure or Jesus, but she felt like she could go either way. She could stay or go. She recalls speaking to this presence that she felt, and she explained how she couldn't go because she had 3 girls to take care of, but at this point she didn't have the 3rd child yet. Interesting. Now cut to 23 years later, she's fine, everybody's fine, but that experience has made an impact on her, of course. So when she told her father about what had happened when she was under, he even said that he himself had a similar experience when he suffered a heart attack.
In our number 3 spot today, we have 45 years. In 1943, Dr. George Ritchie died of pneumonia, but after 9 long minutes, he came back and was sure to tell the tale of what happened while he was gone. He went on to write a book called Return from Tomorrow and My Life After Dying. He recounts a lot of stuff in this book, from an out-of-body experience to meeting people, but the last thing he remembered was meeting someone who he calls God, although it might have been Jesus, or neither. Either way, whoever he met left him with a mental message that told him, quote, "It is left to humanity which direction they shall choose. I came to this planet to show you through the life I led how to love. Without our Father you can do nothing, neither could I. I showed you this. You have 45 years. When he came back to his body, he explained that his throat was on fire and that he felt weight on his chest that was crushing to him. I'm not exactly sure what this message was supposed to mean. I mean, mostly the whole 45 years thing. Dr. Ritchie passed away in 2007, which was almost 64 years after his near-death experience, but whatever this message was intended to mean, that was probably the coolest and most terrifying experience in the whole world.
Number 2, a long nap. These encounters have a similar comforting theme almost, that in the end, one way or another, there's a good chance whatever you believe in, whatever lies beyond is peaceful. This next one gave me comfort, and it comes from a user named Apple Pasta, also great name. They recall being in a coma after a car accident, and they were legally dead for around 2 minutes. Everybody kept asking them what it was like afterwards, which also don't do that, it's pretty rude. Wait till they're ready to talk about it. And their response was always the same. It was the exact same as sleeping. They don't have much memory of it, but the coma, as a whole, they remember this time where everything felt slow and everything was foggy around them. They also felt like their memory of the event is slowly starting to change over time. Maybe they're convincing themselves what they thought happened, but one thing that they're sure of is the feeling that they had, and that the experience has made them unafraid of death, and at the end of the day, dying is just like a long nap. And man, do I love a long nap. I love that last line, man, do I love a long nap, because we do too. Thank you for sharing, Apple Pasta. Sorry about your accident, and we're glad you're okay.
In our number 1 spot today, we have Serenity. This story comes from Reddit, and I thought it might be a good note to end off on because although it is a little eerie, there's something comforting about it as well. The Redditor explained that their grandma was a nurse for her whole life and that during her time she had only ever seen 2 people be resuscitated. One of them was a teenage boy and the other was years and years later, and it was a middle-aged, tough as nails, biker type guy. Neither of them were particularly religious or had any kind of spiritual affiliation, but what was striking to her was that both of them had the same reaction to being brought back, and that was how they both said something along the lines of, "Why'd they do that? I was so peaceful." See what I mean? A little eerie, but also oddly comforting. Aside from that woman who went to the gates of hell, a lot of people I've talked about today have had fairly calming experiences wherever they went during their near-death experience, and I think that that's something that can make us all feel a little bit better about what sits beyond us in the unknown.
Nuclear site list. Here on Most Amazing, we love lists. I'm not sure if you can tell, but apparently the US government also fancies a list or two. Back when Obama was still running the show, a report was delivered to Congress. Well, it was supposed to be. The 266-page report featured every nook and cranny about the US nuclear program, and it was released publicly on the government printing office's website in draft form by accident. Yeah, just a casual PDF that shows us literal maps to stockpiled fuel used for nuclear warheads back in the day. We love those. The only PDFs I actually enjoy are those ones, actually. Does this stuff happen often? How does this happen? I thought this type of stuff could never happen, right? Well, MIT professor John M. Deutsch said these screw-ups do happen, and it doesn't look like a serious breach. I mean, it certainly sounds serious, but okay, we'll trust the government. Thank you, sir. Let's do it. Number 9, ClimateGate. Yeah, we had a smooth one off the bat, now we're getting right into the serious stuff. Climate stuff. Climate change and stuff. A little different sounding than Watergate, but we'll get to that one later on, obviously. ClimateGate, this was back in 2009 when some hackers released thousands of emails and files, all from the Climate Research Unit in the UK. These documents, okay, hold on to your butts for this one, they show scientists suppressing the publication of research going against global warming. So this sparked a bunch of bad ideas because at that point in 2009, we just believed it. We just stopped listening at all. Climate change critics were like, aha, I knew it. It was all a conspiracy this whole time. The CRU responded and said the emails were out of context and that the planet is indeed heating up, and we're still in fact burning towards our demise, but these docs leaked literally weeks before the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Denmark, so peculiar timing, I'd say. Science fired back pretty quick. Scientists all around the world were actively proving at that point that humans actively are causing global warming. Today we're scrambling a bit more to figure this one out than 2009. Yeah, a few more of you believe this time around. Number 8, God Save the Queen. This one's quite grim, but I have to talk about it. Have you ever wondered what will happen after the Queen passes away? I mean, I know it's the last thing we want to think about right now because dark, obviously, but it's hard not to think of, especially when Politico magazine releases Operation London Bridge to the public. Yeah, what is that? This magazine somehow got documents showing each and every step in detail what'll happen when that fateful day arrives. There'll be phone calls to the Prime Minister, of course, would be first. Customs require that the Prime Minister is informed by the monarch's private security. Flags will fly at half-mast, of course, but oddly enough in this document the Queen's death is referred to as D-Day. Yeah, 9 days of protocols will follow afterwards, and after a service at St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle, that's when Queen Elizabeth will be buried with King George VI. It's dark, but I mean, imagine reading about this one morning in 2021. What an odd article. What a brutal way to wake up. Number 7, secret PowerPoint. Nothing sounds less cool than a leaked 41-slide PowerPoint presentation, but I'll do my best. Here we go. When it comes to the NSA, odds are this PowerPoint is going to be pretty juicy, right? This slideshow was often used to train US intelligence, and I gotta say, 41 pages? That's it. I did 45 on medieval knights in high school. That's all I'm saying, step your game up. This program was called PRISM. You probably heard about this. This is a big deal. And it cost about $20 million a year. This was the highlight of the Snowden leak. PRISM kicked off back in 2007. See, originally they partnered with Microsoft, but once they were attached to Apple come 2012, that's when things got a little dicey, as most things are with Apple. The PowerPoint confirmed that the NSA has access to servers belonging to massive tech giants. Google, Skype, YouTube even, so I don't know, search history, you may want to delete that stuff. There was a summit in California which originally was tense. The United States was accusing China of cyber attack, but right after Edward Snowden leaked the PRISM tea, they didn't have much power at said summit. So China and Europe citizens were obviously not too pleased here. Yeah, leaked data, we don't like hearing about that. This one gets a little worse. Number 6, Big Brother is watching. Even allies of the United States are not safe here, okay? Thanks to Snowden, our boy again, gotta mention him a couple times in this list. At the end of October 2013, it was leaked that the states were spying on Germany, France, And Spain. It's a lot of people, it's a lot of eyes, a lot of spies. The NSA had tapped into 35 phones, not just a couple of dudes. They were spying on 35 world leaders, one of which was German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who called out the NSA after finding out and said this act of snooping was just unacceptable between friends. Ah, brutal. She said the F word too. It's like, hey, we were friends, pal. Don't go through my phone. Don't swipe left in the photos, okay? Betrayal. Well, it was also reported that the NSA was monitoring regular phone calls in Spain for the average folks. So if you thought you were off the hook, you're not, literally and figuratively. They monitored about 60 million calls in 1 month. So yeah, world leader or not, be a little concerned about these guys. Maybe. You know, save some tea for in person. You don't want to give up all that good stuff on the phone. Number 5, leaked voters. Back in December 2015, personal information from 191 million voters was leaked to the public online. Yeah, this feels like yesterday. I remember this all unfolding. I was like, what? How? Researcher Chris Vickery found this data while conducting a security investigation. See, Forbes had described Vickery as, dare I say, a good hacker. They're what's referred to as these white hat hackers. They find weak spots in security without sabotaging or exploding them, you know? Unlike Snowden or other people. That's the key, that's the Donnie difference. 79% of those eligible to vote were the victims here, so it was a big one. All their names, addresses, birth dates, phone numbers, emails, you name it, things you don't want other people knowing, let alone third parties, were all out there. If you could vote, you were exposed. We're still unsure who was behind this entire leak. CSO Online and databreaches.net suggest that the information more than likely came from software provider Nation Builder, but CEO Jim Gilliam announced that that was not the case and they did not create the database. Although he conceded that it is possible that some of the information that it contains may have come from the data we make available for free to campaigns. He's like, no, we didn't do it, but maybe we did. It's like, okay. So a third party took what they could and really ran with it. That's terrifying. Time to change your email. Again. Number 4, psychoelectronic weapons. Yeah, this sounds like something Iron Man uses. It doesn't sound too chill now, does it? Psychoelectronic weapons. The first time Curtis Waltman heard of these was by accident, as you could have guessed. He was receiving documents via Yahoo and they were not what he expected. See, originally he had filed a Freedom of Information Act request to Washington State Fusion Center. See, he was trying to find out more on the clashes between Antifa and the far right, but he got a response and it was all about experimental weapons. Guy gets a zip file back in return called EM Effects on Human Body. He's like, Big Shiny Tune 6? He's like, what? I didn't ask for this. Way too many viruses in that one. Big Shiny Tune 7, I think was the good one. That's the good one. In this document, he saw diagrams on these weapons and the effects that they have on people. There's muscle quaking, all body pain. One of the effects allowed users to control their dreams. Is this a weapon? This is pretty remarkable. This was clearly sent by mistake. The only emails I get are student loans, and those ones are not by mistake. Those ones are definitely on purpose. They're like, Mr. Taylor. I'm like, oh God, they found me. Number 3, quantum computer. This next one's pretty eye-opening. Here we go. Computers are getting more and more advanced by the day. Deepfakes are also getting way too good. I've fallen for way too many fake trailers. I thought they were doing a Back to the Future reboot with Tom Holland and Robert Downey Jr. for like 4 days. All fake. Whole thing's fake. But thanks to our man Snowden, the OG secret revealer, it was reported in the Washington Post on January 2nd, 2014, that the NSA is working hard at creating their own computer. Yeah, how fun must that one be? I wonder if it can run Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 without getting hot. No computer can do that. It's called the quantum computer and it costs about $80 million to create this program. This computer is safely stored in a massive room-sized metal box, not intimidating at all. It's part of a program called Penetrating Hard Targets. So it can break encryptions for just about anything. Finance records, medical, your old MSN, hopefully, maybe, probably, definitely not. What a nightmare that would be. The NSA is well on their way to breaking every form of public encryption. This quantum computer can theoretically break through any RSA encryption, which for the average computer today, that takes years. This supercomputer they're working on can break through a lot faster. We can get through in days, even hours. So you better clear that search history now while you still can. Thanks for the hot tips, Snowden. I was gonna switch to PC gaming, but you know what? I'll wait it out. I'll wait till this new one comes out. It looks a little faster. Number 2, WikiLeaks war logs. Companies have to be somewhere, right? We're in a film studio in Toronto. We go to a certain place. We leave said certain place in a said certain area. Right? Where do places like WikiLeaks live? How do they stay secure? Well, in Stockholm, apparently, buried under 100 feet below street level in an old nuclear bunker. That's where. Right next to Pirate Bay. They're neighbors, actually. They knock on the cement walls. Today, it's a facility owned by Swedish internet provider Bahnhof. Now, this is where they keep servers for WikiLeaks, but Julian Assange, frontrunner of this whole operation, his hard drive is in this bunker behind a 2-foot steel door accompanied by numerous backup generators, so he's secure. In October 2010, WikiLeaks actually published Army field reports from 2004 to 2009. Now, it's one of the biggest leaks in US history. This report confirmed that there were over 66,000 civilian deaths in the Iraq war logs out of the 109,000 confirmed in total. That's horrible. This leak also suggested that some American troops were classifying civilians as enemies in their statistics afterwards. These numbers were from 2004 to 2009. One of the biggest leaks in US history, no doubt about it. And finally, number 1, Watergate. Yeah, it's not an internet leak, but it's too good to talk about. This is OG, come on. We have to finish on Watergate. In the middle of 1972, there were 5 men who were all arrested for breaking into the Democratic National Committee headquarters at the Watergate Hotel in Washington, D.C. Now, it was pretty obvious they intended on bugging the place. They looked like spy kids. They had all the gears. They were, it was fishy. As the year went on, the election came closer and closer, and then all of a sudden, out of the woodwork comes this anonymous source who fed information to Washington Post reporters that apparently the Watergate bugging incident was a massive campaign of political spying and sabotage kicked off by none other than President Nixon himself. Yeah, he was trying to get that re-election. Now, despite this information leak and it being reported in the news and all that good stuff, Nixon was still re-elected, even though he was involved in this entire scandal. These men were clearly linked to a fundraising group for Nixon, but his administration just kept denying any involvement. It wasn't until a year later in 1972 when reporters Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward, they also came forward and exposed more stuff. Yeah, they exposed the administration's role in this entire scandal, and they had an inside source, an FBI agent named Mark Feltz, and this ultimately led to Nixon resigning later in 1974, the first president to do so.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have SIM cards. We see all the time in movies and shows when people are trying to be super secret, they smash their phone and their SIM card, but as it turns out, maybe we should all be smashing our SIM cards, super secret lifestyle or not. In February of 2015, it was reported that Snowden provided documents that showed that the NSA and GCHQ had hacked into a Dutch company that is responsible for manufacturing and supplying 2 billion SIM cards per year, and they supply places like AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and a variety of other providers. While this hack would suggest that the agencies would then now have access to billions of unique encryption keys, which could potentially allow them to bypass wireless providers and monitor both voice and data transmissions of every user that has a SIM card made by this company. The company did reply to the situation and said that they had been the target of at least 2, quote, particularly sophisticated intrusions, and they suggested that they believed that the NSA and the GCHQ were responsible, but the company then denied that the hack was successful in gaining access to those encryption keys.
Number 9, quantum computer. This next one is eye-opening, to say the least. Computers are getting more and more advanced by the day. Deepfakes are going to ruin my life. They're getting really good at those. I feel like an old man every time I see those and fall for it. But thanks to our man Snowden, it was reported in the Washington Post on January 2nd, 2014, that the NSA is working hard at creating their own computer. How fun must that be? It's called the quantum computer, and it cost about $80 million to create. And no, it can't send you back in time. This computer is safely stored in a massive room-sized metal box, which is not intimidating at all, and it's part of a program called Penetrating Hard Targets. I want to make so many jokes, but I won't. So it can break encryptions for just about anything. Finance records, medical, your old MSN, probably. What a nightmare that would be. The NSA is well on their way to breaking every form of public encryption. This quantum computer can theoretically break through any RSA encryption, which for the average computer today, that takes, I don't know, years, but this supercomputer can break through a lot faster. I'm talking days. Just don't go in my MSN, please.
In our number 8 spot today, we have Project Dishfire. It was reported by The Guardian that it had been revealed that the NSA collects 200 million text messages a day from around the world. They then use these messages to pull the details of certain location information, contact networks, and the credit card details of different mobile users. It was also reported that the NSA also provided British intelligence agencies with all of the data, just without the actual context of the text messages. So the NSA has all your secrets and nudies, but at least they didn't share them? I don't know. Basically, they have all of this data and at any point could potentially extract certain information like past travel plans, your financial transactions, your contacts, regardless of whether or not you were being investigated for something. Yes, this sounds illegal, unethical, and a little shady, and this revelation all came before former President Barack Obama gave a speech about proposed policy changes in reaction to the whistleblowing that was going on around Snowden and the NSA.
Number 7, friends without benefits. Even allies of the United States are not safe here. Thanks to Snowden, at the end of October 2013, it was leaked that the states were spying on Germany, France, and Spain. The NSA had tapped into 35 phones, which, by the way, not just a couple of random dudes, they were spying on 35 world leaders. One of which was German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who called out the NSA after finding out, of course, and said this act of snooping was just unacceptable between friends. Really went personal with the friends comment there. It's like when you show somebody a photo on your phone and they start swiping, like, hi, hello, betrayal, see ya. Now, as you hear this, you're thinking, well, I'm not a world leader, what's the big deal here? Well, it was also reported that the NSA was monitoring phone calls in Spain for the average folk. They monitored about 60 million calls in 1 month, so yeah, world leader or not, be a little concerned about these guys. Maybe.
In our number 6 spot today, we have the Brazil spying scandal. It was reported by The Guardian that Brazil was second only to the United States in terms of the amount of communications that were being subjected to surveillance by the NSA. This means that the NSA were seriously spying on millions of Brazilians, including the emails and phone calls of their president. At the G20 summit that year, which took place in Russia, Brazil's president at the time, Dilma Rousseff, had a one-on-one meeting with Obama in reference to this. He said that he would look into it and get back to her, but before he could, more NSA tea was spilled, and it was revealed that the agency had also targeted Petrobras, which is Brazil's state oil company. This led the president to call this new information industrial espionage, and as a result, she called off her scheduled visit to the White House and demanded answers. The called off visit was important because it was to be the first state visit by a Brazilian president in about 2 decades, and although the Obama administration claimed that it was a joint decision made by both presidents, some media outlets described it as the sternest punishment that had been received at that time in response to all of these NSA leaks. This also led Brazil to take a multitude of steps to hopefully get away from the American-run internet.
Number 5. Backup. When Glenn Greenwald kicked this whole thing off in 2013 with Snowden and his reveals, it was this massive security breach. Obviously, Snowden was of course in hot water immediately, but he was ahead of the game from the start. See, Snowden had told Greenwald that if anything crazy happens to him, well, he'll just leak even more information. If Snowden was unable to access these encrypted documents on one of his 4 laptops, then it was set up to automatically send those private documents to higher ups, aka the people directly involved in the leak. On top of that, Snowden reminded The Guardian that he has many more secrets to spill, specifically the NSA's surveillance systems. This is why you make backups. Duly noted, Snowden.
In our number 4 spot today, we have the embassy catastrophe. There was a document from 2007 that was leaked which named 38 different embassies and missions that were so-called targets of US surveillance. This document didn't quite make it clear whether or not these targets were being looked into by only the NSA or if the CIA and FBI were also involved. The document described certain things like bugging fax machines with devices that allowed them to listen in on conversation, and the document also listed the names of different programs that are used within the embassies. The document showed that the embassies targeted weren't just those of countries who seemed to be enemies with the United States, and instead included places like India and Mexico, Greece, and Turkey. It appears as if the goal was to gain insider information into the diplomatic relations between the targets and the United States. The EU embassy in Washington, D.C. was one of the targets on this document, and this leak had the potential to have jeopardized one of the largest attempted free trade agreements in the world, because shortly after this all came out, negotiations were set to begin between the EU and the United States. The French president at the time made his anger about the situation very public and stated that all future negotiations will only be made under the agreement that the United States cease all unauthorized surveillance of any EU buildings or personnel.
Number 3. China. I mentioned earlier that summit where the United States originally wanted to call out China for cyber attacks, but instead Snowden leaked a PowerPoint training slideshow and the tables were turned just like that. Snowden revealed himself as this massive spy kid on June 12th, and he said he was planning on remaining in Hong Kong until he was kicked out. But in his first press interview since coming out with all this information, he informed South China's Morning Post that the NSA was hacking Chinese and Hong Kong computers since back in 2009. That's a long time ago. It's like when Avatar 1 came out. That's how long ago that was. More specifically, Snowden said that the NSA hacked the Chinese University of Hong Kong, aka the heart of all internet traffic in Hong Hong Kong. Now, of course, this is eye-opening, but there's many who see this hack attack as a good thing. See, citizens want to know what their government's up to, and honestly, I myself would love to know if the NSA was rummaging through my chats. So a poll was conducted on June 10th and 11, and apparently 44% of Americans were on board with Snowden's outing. They were with him, and 42% of Americans say that he's a bad boy. 57% were not a fan of the NSA's action, while 37% were on board. 30% of folks liked the fact that they were being spied on. That's some weird kind of kink, I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you want the NSA in your Dropbox? Let us know in the comments your thoughts below. We'd love to hear from you.
In our number 2 spot today, we have caller information. In 2013, it was reported by The Guardian that, according to the documents that were leaked by Snowden, the Obama administration has allowed the NSA to collect different caller information from Verizon. This was done through what was called a quote business records provision of the Patriot Act that was established under the presidency of George W. Bush. It allowed the government to order Verizon to hand over caller information every single day. The information included things like the time, location, and duration of the call. The information began being collected under the Bush administration in 2001, and they were collected from AT&T, Verizon, and Bell South. Of course, once these documents were leaked and the information became public knowledge, US officials began trying to reassure the public that this surveillance was somehow necessary and was actually a program vital to national security, but many people rightfully felt like the spying was an unnecessary invasion of their privacy. This one is tricky because there certainly is a fine line with these things.
And finally, number 1. PowerPoint. Nothing sounds less cool than a leaked 41-slide PowerPoint presentation. But when it comes to the NSA, odds are it's going to be a little juicy. This slideshow is used to train US intelligence, and I gotta say, 41 pages? That's it? I did 45 on medieval knights in high school. Step your game up. This program called Prism cost about $20 million a year, and it was the highlight of this leak. Prism kicked off back in 2007. Originally, they partnered with Microsoft, but once they were attached to Apple, come 2012, well, that's when things got a little bit fishy, as most things are with Apple, specifically their maps. That was horrible. The PowerPoint confirmed that the NSA has access to servers belonging to massive tech giants like Google, Skype, or even YouTube. Yeah, right here, they're listening right now. So your search history, emails, anything that rolls through those, usernames, passwords, well, they've got them. Even Skaterboy69 at Hotmail, odds are they're already looking. You're done. You're canceled, Brad. There was a summit in California which originally was tense. The United States were accusing China of cyber attacks, but right after Edward leaked this Prism tea, they didn't have much power at that summit. China and Europe's citizens weren't too pleased here, and honestly, yeah, it's a botched meeting. I can understand why.
For 10 spot, we have the demonic particle accelerator. It seems that Elon is trying to cast CERN's Large Hadron Collider, aka the particle accelerator, in a bad light. Via Twitter, through a meme, Elon called it demonic. What the heck about it could be demonic? This is honestly fascinating, as us, regular folk would just assume that it's just a scientific tool. The tweet read, "Please let me use the CERN Large Hadron Collider. I am normal and I can be trusted with a demonic technology unlike anything the world has ever seen." Does this machine have some kind of darker purpose that perhaps the rest of the world may not be privy to? Do tell, Elon. Do tell. In our number 9 spot, we have the government tax agenda. In a tweet that Elon made on August 11th, 2022, he pointed out perhaps yet another government secret. The US government has been talking about decreasing taxes and making that a focus for Americans. And yes, most recently, on the taxpayer's dollar, the government hired 87,000 new IRS agents, aka the Internal Revenue Service Agency. Is this a dark secret that Elon just brought light to? Is the government saying one thing and doing the other? Possibly. Along with the tweet, Elon said, "Fate," heart emoji, irony. In our number 8 spot, we have the depopulation agenda. In an interview with the Nelk Boys on the Full Send podcast, Elon spoke about how our population is declining even though we're being told otherwise. He said that we've been pushing the movement of the side hustle boss onto all females and males, and so they want to wait to have children. And then some just don't want to have kids at all, and as a result, the population is decreasing. He went on to explain that the way that you can measure if the population is decreasing or not is the ratio of adult depends to diapers. If there's more depends than diapers, then it's because people aren't having a lot of babies. I thought this to be very, very interesting as I sat for a moment and thought about all the people that I know that don't want kids, and also all the people that I know that are in their 30s and don't feel anywhere ready. Perhaps we will see the results of this in years to come. In our number 7 spot, we have the government on Twitter. In a series of many tweets, Elon has been peeling back the layers of Twitter and seemingly trying to expose it as a government orchestrated ruse. From the moment Elon announced that he was going to buy Twitter, people suspected that, he had an agenda, whether it was to implement better free speech policies within the company, or whether to expose that the company is actually being used by people and not just bots that have been programmed to push an agenda. In a most recent tweet, Elon posted an article about a former federal law enforcement and intelligence operations, Dan Woods, who claims that 80% of Twitter users are probably bots. Knowing this information, of course, makes it more likely that the government is using it for their agenda. Honestly though, this one doesn't surprise me if true. How many people do you know that still uses Twitter and actually tweets? I know 0. That to me says a lot. Would love to know your thoughts though in the comment section below. In our number 6 spot, we have Who Are You Trolling? In a tweet from August 1st, Elon shared a meme that stated, "A smart man bases his political beliefs on his thoughts. A wise one changes them depending upon who they are trolling." This is a very interesting message that some think seemingly stems from the same message as George Orwell's book 1984. It's a commentary on the fact that if you feel angry towards anyone in politics, then know that this anger comes from influence in some way and you have been influenced. You will never actually know the truth, only what you're told. This is a darker government secret that people believe that Musk is trying to expose, that perhaps it is wise to not feel any sort of emotion and stay neutral to the stories that you are being told. And if you begin to lean any one way, question your anger, and in the case of this tweet, question your trolling and where it came from. In our number 5 spot, we have no aliens. In the Full Send podcast interview, Elon recently said, "If the universe is really 13.8 billion years old, shouldn't there be aliens everywhere? If not, why not?" Carl Sagan said there's either a lot of aliens or no aliens, and either one is equally terrifying. If there are no aliens, then what we have here is very rare. Some people believe that perhaps he was revealing here that human beings are unique, and perhaps the government doesn't want us to realize this, as then we would see life as way more of a precious thing. Perhaps if the world did think that humans were unique, then we would see our life as precious and, eat well, take care of ourselves, and try to be happy, and that certainly wouldn't be good for any business that benefits from people getting sick and hating life and the world. In our number 4 spot, we have Area 51. On the Full Send podcast, Elon revealed that Area 51 is not as what people believe it to be. He definitely hinted at the goings-on within the secret place, but he made it seem less supernatural and dark as the internet has made it seem. But then of course some people online think that he would say that because perhaps he's in cahoots with them, and they want to get the world off their trail, and so they have had him speak about it as if it's nothing special. He did reveal that the government and the people of Area 51 have invented weapons that the public haven't heard of and thought of yet. So perhaps, depending on how you interpret that, these weapons could be intended for some dark use, but the very purpose of a weapon is not positive, so of course. In our number 3 spot, we have government hypocrisy. Recently, you may have heard about the fact that the USA still has many people in jail that were put in there because of heed, minus the H and throw a W in front. Are you with me? Heed. Don't want this video to get dinged. Anyways, there is a lot of people still in jail for this drug, and a lot of people find it crazy that this could be the case, as throughout the country it has now been legalized. But recently the US government traded a Russian war criminal with Russia to free the women's basketball player who was imprisoned there for this very substance. It feels a little hypocritical, I don't know. On Twitter, Elon said this, "Maybe free some people in jail for heed here too," and then posted this meme of a man not looking too pleased with his hands on his hips, and the meme said, "People in the US in jail for heed, while the government trades a Russian war criminal to free a women's basketball player in jail for heed." Is Elon pointing out the hypocrisy in this action and hinting at a weird dark secret agenda that the government might be hiding? Possibly. In our number 2 spot, we have the NPCs. Again, in the Full Send interview with the Nelk Boys, Elon speaks about how everyone in the corporate world are like NPCs. He said, quote, "Are you even real? How do we know that you're not an NPC?" This had the internet in a frenzy as they contemplated, is Elon pointing out the fact that people in the corporate and political world are possibly NPCs? Is this his subtle way of telling everyone? He has been trying to get viewers to see that a large part of Twitter is just bots, so there's that. Is this a stretch? Could we be living amongst NPCs? In our number 1 spot, we have the Epstein list. Jeffrey Epstein is a former business financier who died in prison by supposedly taking his own life in 2019 while awaiting trial on federal trafficking charges. Jeffrey was known as somewhat of a celeb amongst the Hollywood elite, and he is seen in many pictures with many celebs over many decades. Since his arrest, the public have wondered who out of his Hollywood friends were involved in this scandal, as he obviously didn't do it alone. From Bill Clinton to Prince Andrew, there have been many names that have flown on Jeffrey's private jet to his island where everything was said to have taken place. After the most recent trial with Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey's accomplice, who was also convicted, an apparent list of celebrities that were involved was given to the court but not released to the public. Elon took to Twitter to comment on this. He uploaded a picture of a meme that said, "Things I'll never see in my life," with photos of a dragon, dinosaurs, and a unicorn, and the words, "the Epstein/Maxwell client list." He then went on to say, "Only thing more remarkable than the DOJ, the Department of Justice, not leaking the list is that no one in the media cares. Doesn't that seem odd?" He then added, "Sometimes I think my list of enemies is too short." So, insinuating that he will most likely make more enemies after this tweet. Many people believe that he was insinuating that there are people in the government, the Department of Justice, and the media on the list, and that is what Elon is trying to get the public to see. It would certainly make sense as to why the media is not reporting about it.
Drugs. This is honestly no secret at all. Hollywood is filled with drugs because, contrary to popular belief, money can't buy you happiness, but it can buy you a ton of drugs. If you don't want to take my word for it, take it from Dennis Quaid. The actor said he had dabbled in cocaine before becoming a star, but it was just for casual use. I love how that's so casual, like, oh, just cocaine for the casual use. In 1974, he moved to LA and his usage didn't get out of control until he started being on set for all these big mainstream movies. Quaid revealed that movie budgets disguised cocaine as petty cash to keep the drugs on set a secret. Moreover, it's freely given out on movie sets because it was just the norm back then and everyone was just doing it. He then shared his coke addiction caused his life to fall apart, and it was because of Hollywood. Another prime example is obviously Matthew Perry, who plays Chandler on Friends. If you didn't know that, are you literally living under a rock? Now, he was seriously addicted to cocaine for like 3 full seasons of Friends, which he doesn't even recall filming. I didn't think it was given out that sparingly though, but you know what they say, cocaine is the rich man's drug.
Moving on to number 9, we have the casting couch. So this is probably not the biggest secret anymore, but for quite some time it was. Basically, there's a lot of sleazebags in Hollywood. Some Hollywood directors or stars invite females over and, well, offer them roles in movies in exchange for certain favors. They call this the casting couch. It's absolutely disgusting. Like, they use their wealth and power to persuade innocent people. But sadly, a lot of people desperate for fame will agree to this. In an interview with GQ magazine, Megan Fox actually revealed the truth behind this. She said that numerous big Hollywood legends would invite her over for what she thought was just going to be like a meeting for a new opportunity. But when she got there, she realized their true intentions. She shut down several men throughout her career.
At number 8, we have Alfred Hitchcock. This one honestly pains me because I love his films, but he's such a misogynistic human being. Like, I'm like, ugh. Since his films emphasize a voyeuristic viewpoint from the male protagonist, most female characters were almost just like stock characters. They were remote, usually blonde, sexy, and in the end they always got humiliated. With films like Psycho, Rebecca, and of course The Birds, the man achieved a lot but was a total dick. He once referred to actors as cattle, which, I mean, you may be directing the movie, but they are literally bringing it to life. With The Birds, there was major controversy concerning Hitchcock and his treatment of the female lead, Tippi Hedren, who plays Melanie. After she was cast, Alfred became literally obsessed with her and would grab her out of nowhere, non-consensually, and touch her sexually. He stalked her throughout shooting and would isolate her from the rest of the cast while whispering explicit things in her ear. Tippi obviously shut down all advances, and he did not take that well. In the last phone booth attack scene, Tippi's face was cut by the glass pane, and she said she was misled about the logistics of the scene. Or did Alfred just do it on purpose as revenge? If that wasn't petty enough, he also signed her to a 7-year contract that restricted her ability to do work. This was actually never confirmed, but it came to light after he died, and even her co-star confirmed it. Apparently, he also taunted Tippi's daughter, Melanie Griffith, by giving her a wax figure of her mum in a coffin as a present when she was only 6 years old.
Making our way down the list of number 7, we have the Hollywood sign. So, a lot of dark things go down in Hollywood, as you probably realize by now. One of them was the suicide of Megan Twistle, a struggling Hollywood actress. She had dreams of making it big in Hollywood, but sadly that didn't happen. She was a successful Broadway actor, but didn't have much success in the film field. Her one role was a 15-second appearance in the movie Hazel's Cousins. The pressures of being successful in Hollywood, along with the Great Depression, kinda got to her. On the night of September 16th, 1932, she climbed to the top of the H on the Hollywood sign and jumped to her death. Now, this tragic incident actually had a huge influence on current pop culture. In the 2009 film Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief, the H in the Hollywood sign was made the entrance to the underworld. In Lana Del Rey's song Lust for Life, it starts with the lyrics, "Climb up the H of the Hollywood sign." It's assumed that these are both references to Peg's death.
Now, at number 6 is Jane Mansfield. To be honest, I had not heard of Jane until I started researching this video, but wow, she was actually gorgeous. She was an American actress, singer, nightclub entertainer, and one of the first Playboy playmates. She was in movies like The Girl Can't Help It and Too Hot to Handle, and a bunch of more movies that came out way before I was born, and I haven't seen any of them. Now, in 1967, Jane was in Mississippi doing some appearances, and on the 28th of June, the plan was to go to New Orleans for another appearance. So Jane, her driver Ronnie, her attorney Sam, and 3 of her kids got into the car and set off on their way. At around 2:30 AM on Highway 90, their car was speeding when it crashed into the back of a tractor trailer. The adults in the front died instantly, including Jane, but her children thankfully walked away with minor injuries. Now, apparently Jane was actually decapitated since the car had its top literally sheared off, and it looked like her hair was tangled in the windshield. But it turns out she just suffered from severe head trauma, as in her skull was crushed. I love how I was like, just severe head trauma, that's a lot. And the blonde hair was from the wig that she was wearing, apparently. It was this incident that propelled the NHTSA to start adopting an under-eyed guard on their tractor trailers, which is sometimes called a Mansfield bar. Fun fact, one of her kids that survived was Mariska Hargitay, who you all must know from Law and Order Special Victims Unit. I literally used to watch her so much growing up, I was like, damn, she has a hard name. But then I realized people pronounce my name really badly, and I'm like, okay, at least my name's not Mariska Hargitay.
We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with The Cursed Project. The 1961 film The Misfits was filmed with old Hollywood stars like Marilyn Monroe, Montgomery Clift, and Clark Gable. So you would think it would be a big success, right? Not so much. In fact, this movie is said to be cursed. When filming, they experienced a number of setbacks and bad things would happen to them. Then, Gable died of a heart attack a few days after filming. Marilyn Monroe overdosed on set and then died barely a year later after the film was finished. And the night that the movie was airing on television, Clift died of a heart attack. That's so spooky. Like, all 3 stars died very soon after the production ended. So it's thought that this movie is somehow cursed.
And number 4 is Superman. No, I'm not talking about Henry Cavill, but I honestly really wish I was. No, I'm talking about George Reeves, who not only played Superman on TV in Adventures of Superman, he was also Superman in the film Superman and the Mole Men. And also producer Chris just told me there was also a Christopher Reeves who also played Superman. But what made George notable was the manner in which he died or got murdered. On the 16th of June 1969, the LAPD reported that George had been shot in the head at some point between 1 and 2 in the morning. The people in the house at the time were his fiancée Lenore and 4 other people. They all went out, some to a restaurant, whereas Reeves went to a friend's wrestling match. Around midnight he went to bed while 2 of their friends were downstairs just having a bit of a party. Apparently he came down and angrily told them to be quiet, then calmed down and stayed for a while, had a drink, and then went back to bed. All the guests were downstairs when a while later they heard a single gunshot, and by the time they went upstairs, they found him lying across the bed naked with a pistol between his feet. It looked like he had shot himself, and the friends took an awfully long time to call the police, so they were so shocked and so very drunk. One friend claimed his fiancée was actually upstairs with him and came down after the gunshot, telling everyone to tell the police she was downstairs the whole time. Alright, Lenore, you're a bit shady. There was no gunpowder on Reeves's hands, no fingerprints on the gun, the bullet was found in the ceiling, yet there were also multiple bullets in the ground, yet they all only heard one gunshot. On the flip side, George was also sleeping with Fixer and MGM VP Eddie Mannix's wife Toni at the time, but you'll find out about him later. He is a douchebag. Rumor had it that Eddie had mafia ties and found out about the affair and had him killed. So either his fiancée killed him, the mafia killed him, or he actually did commit suicide. I don't know.
Coming in at number 3, we have the mysterious death of Thelma Todd. At just the age of 29, Thelma Todd became a successful Hollywood star. That was until December 16th, 1935, when she was found dead in her car in Jewel Carmen's garage. Jewel Carmen was an actress and wife of Roland West, who Thelma had the occasional fling with. The cause of death was carbon monoxide poisoning. However, her car wasn't running when they found her, and it still had fuel in the tank. As a result, this has become a huge Hollywood secret. No one truly knows what happened to her. Was it accidental, or was it her ex-husband seeking revenge? Maybe it was her business partner or secret lover, maybe even her shady agent. We really don't know. Now, West did say that he locked her out, which made her seek refuge in her car, and so she may have accidentally killed herself from having the car running in a closed garage. But autopsy revealed that she had damage to her throat. One popular theory is that she died at the hands of West, who then staged her death to look like an accident. There's just a lot of secrets surrounding the case. Someone knows what happened, but to this day, we truly don't know.
Now at number 2 is the Fixer. Some believe any publicity is good publicity, but I mean there's legitimately bad press out there. Like if you're gonna get caught getting arrested for a DUI or you go to jail for murder, that is bad publicity. You may have heard of this before, but in Hollywood when someone gets into a bit of a sticky situation, they hire a fixer like Michael Sitrick to twist the negative stories into positive ones. I get why fixers are so important since celebrities get into shit every week, but sometimes they protect the wrong people. For example, back in 1937, Patricia Douglas, a 20-year-old actress, went to an after party for the MGM annual sales convention. And just imagine this party as a giant Hollywood frat party where people can legit do whatever they want because of how much money is just floating in the air. Either way, during the night, MGM sales exec David Ross, along with a friend, forced her to get drunk before sexually assaulting her. Patricia obviously wanted to press charges, and she did, but MGM got their fixer, Eddie Mannix, who I also mentioned beforehand, got him involved, and he made sure David's studio was never mentioned during the scandal. That in turn ruined Patricia's reputation, and Eddie somehow also got a portrayal in Hail Caesar, which is some sick kind of karma after ruining Patricia's life and God knows how many more.
And in our number 1 spot, we have The Poltergeist. This 1982 film has been scaring people for years, and not just from its creepy storyline. No, the film itself is cursed. In fact, it has been named the most cursed franchise in Hollywood. Brace yourself. It's about to get creepy. So first off, the skeletons used in the rainy pool scene were real skeletons. Yeah, apparently it was cheaper to get real ones than to make fake ones. So that's probably how the film became cursed. Then while filming a scene where a character gets choked by a robot clown doll, the actor actually got choked by the doll. Steven Spielberg thought that he was just doing a really realistic performance, but then noticed that he started to turn purple. That's not all. Multiple actors from the movies died tragically either during or after filming. Dominique Dunne, who played the older sister in the first movie, got murdered right after its premiere. Then 2 other actors died from cardiac arrest, and Lou Perryman, who was Pugsley in the movie, got brutally murdered by an ex-convict. So yeah, too many freaky coincidences for the film not to be cursed.
Starting off this countdown, we have the Vipe Home experiments.
This was a series of experiments in Sweden from 1945 to 1955. It's literally going to make you sick to your stomach when you find out what they did. Basically, they force-fed people with mental illness sweets to see if sugar was related to tooth decay. Imagine people just cramming food down your throat against your will. It's very gross. These experiments were conducted by the government and sponsored by the sugar industry. The experiments lasted for about 2 years, and by then the teeth of about 50 of the subjects in the experiment had been completely ruined. In our 9th spot, we had the UK Special Demonstration Squad. This is the name of a group of undercover police officers in the UK. Now, the things that they did are going to shock you. For example, they would steal birth certificates and identities of people that had died at a young age. They'd make sure that they would be around their age and then use their identities. The younger the person died, the better, because that means they didn't already live a life that they would have to cover up. And then they would go around with this new identity. Some cases they actually got into relationships with women, but the whole time they did so just to spy on them. In November of 2015, the Metropolitan Police Force apologized to 7 women tricked into relationships by these officers. Like, imagine that, dating someone you're madly in love with, sometimes even having a kid with them, only for them to be like, oh, sorry, gotta go, was only dating you to get intel on you and your friend circle. It's disgusting, and it's actually happened to multiple women. In our 8th spot, we have the radioactive waste. Apparently, there's a huge radioactive dumping zone located in Tonawanda, New York. In fact, they dumped more than 37 million gallons of radioactive waste from their World War II atomic bomb tests. This area has a high rate of cancer and thyroid conditions, and this is the reason why, and no one's talking about it. In our 7th spot, we have the hepatitis tests. In 1956, the US government began running tests on young individuals living at the Willowbrook State School in Staten Island. This was a state-supported institution for children with intellectual disabilities. And what they did to these students was give them hepatitis in order to track the development of the viral infection. Of course, they were being experimented on without knowledge or consent. To make matters worse, the study lasted 14 years. They also injected them with a number of drugs to see what they would do to their body and the hepatitis. Imagine intentionally making a group of people sick for an experiment. The grossest part is that when the government was exposed for this project, they tried to justify their actions by saying that these people were probably gonna wind up contracting it anyways. In our 6th spot today, we have Operation Popeye. This is another very wild one. Operation Popeye was a highly classified weather modification program during the Vietnam War from 1967 to 1972. You heard me correctly. The government learned how to control the weather. Basically, they wanted to increase rainfall in certain areas to prevent enemies and military supply trucks from being able to travel. In fact, they caused a number of landslides and flooding in that area. Weather manipulation has since been banned from use for military gain. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with HIV. In the 1980s, the HIV epidemic broke out. No one knew how it spread, they just knew that it should be feared, and tons of LGBTQ+ community members were sadly contracting the virus. Well, rumor has it that HIV was a government experiment that was meant to wipe out the undesirables. Of course, the US government has denied this claim, and it's just a conspiracy, we don't know for sure. But based on the other experiments done on minority groups, it's hard to know what to believe. In our 4th spot today, we have Project 112 and Project SHAD, or SHAD. Project 112 and Project SHAD took place from 1962 to 1973 and involved a number of veterans or military personnel. Basically, both tests involved exposing these people to substances they might want to use in warfare. Nearly 6,000 people were exposed to Coxiella burnetii, which is Q fever, Staphylococcus enterotoxin B, which causes food poisoning, and sarin and soman gas. Sarin is a very, very dangerous nerve gas, and soman can cause death in minutes. Both can be fatal if only the tiniest amount gets on the skin. These men had no clue that they were being exposed to this. Moving on to number 3, we have Project Sunshine. This is another very messed up government project. During the 1950s, the US government was using stillborns to conduct radiation tests on. They wanted to determine the effects that radiation would have on humans and how much we could withstand in case of a nuclear fallout. They called this Project Sunshine, and it was anything but rainbows and sunshine. What's sad is that the government was stealing body parts and tissues from morgues without families' consent. It said that more than 1,500 samples were gathered worldwide. This is incredibly sad and sick. Coming in at number 2, we have the syphilis experiments. In 1932, the US Public Health Service created an experiment to see the health effects of untreated syphilis. But the test subjects were told that they were receiving free treatment to cure their syphilis. And that was a lie. Instead of giving the men the recommended penicillin treatment, they gave them placebos, like aspirin. Sadly, 28 men died of syphilis because of these experiments, 100 more passed away from syphilis-related complications, and 40 spouses contracted this disease. And 19 women who gave birth passed on syphilis to their newborn children. In 1997, Bill Clinton apologized to the survivors and their families on behalf of the government. And he admitted that the tests were, and I quote, profoundly and morally wrong. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the radiation tests. In 1953, a number of tests were done on pregnant women to see the effects that radioactive iodine would have on them and their newborns. These studies were terrible. In one study, researchers gave these women doses of iodine 131. Sadly, they all miscarried. When they did, they continued to study the women's aborted embryos. Another study took place after World War II. 829 pregnant mothers in Tennessee were given vitamin drinks. They were informed that these drinks would improve their health and their babies. But it actually contained radioactive iron, and the researchers wanted to see how fast the radioisotopes crossed into the placenta. Several of the young passed away from these experiments. 4 died from cancers as a result of the experiments, and the women experienced rashes, bruises, anemia, hair and tooth loss, and cancer as well. Meanwhile, they just wanted the best for their babies and thought that this drink was going to help them, not kill them.